Hey everybody! So this video we're looking at the different types of proteins and the jobs that they can do. So every organism makes thousands of different proteins, but they all tend to fit into one of these main categories. So the first protein type are structural proteins. And so these are proteins that give strength to a certain tissue in the body, or they help glue or stick tissues together. So strength or binding. And the example we've got here is the collagen or collagen protein, which is found in mammals and other animals too. Collagen is made by our skin cells, and it gives our skin its structure and its shape as well. Okay, the next group of proteins that are common are signaling proteins. Signaling or communication. So obviously these proteins are involved in sending messages within the cell or between cells in the body. And they include really important proteins like hormones that are responsible for controlling the main processes in our organs and systems. So, controlling processes. This example here is the insulin protein. Really important hormone that controls our blood sugar levels, and people that have type 1 diabetes, they can't produce insulin properly, and that's what causes a lot of their symptoms. Well, all their symptoms. The next class of proteins are called transport proteins. And obviously these proteins are responsible for carrying different molecules to certain parts of the body or within a cell to different areas of the cell. Okay, this example here is hemoglobin. Hemoglobin, which we should remember is in our red blood cells, and that's what transports oxygen and carbon dioxide around our body. So vital for animals that live on land and need to breathe in oxygen and carbon dioxide using their lungs. And for fish as well that live in the water and use their gills. Alright, the next class of proteins are called enzymes. And these are probably the broadest and most diverse group of all, because these are proteins that make chemical reactions happen. Well, they speed up chemical reactions. So all the processes that happen in our cells, and there's thousands and thousands of them going on at any one time, they're all controlled by enzymes, which cause them to speed up. And this enzyme here is called amylase. And amylase is made by our salivary glands, and it breaks down sugar in our mouth when we're chewing on our food, and it breaks it down into smaller molecules to help digestion. Okay, the next group we have are called motor proteins. So motor means movement. So these proteins are responsible for making parts of the body move. Making cells or tissues move. So obviously, every animal that has muscles, we've got a lot of motor proteins in our muscles, and they're responsible for making our muscles move and making us being able to move as an animal in general. The two key proteins in animals are called actin and myosin. That's what builds up our muscles. Okay, there's two more groups of proteins. The first one, these are defense proteins. Really important in our immune system to fight off infections and try and prevent us getting infected in the first place. So fighting and preventing infection. And probably the most famous one of these proteins, of the defense proteins, are antibodies. So this is why we can become immune to a disease, because our body produces antibodies that fight that disease specifically. And that's what happens when you become immunized. It lets your body produce antibodies a lot faster than it would against that disease. Okay, there's one more class of proteins. These are called storage proteins. Pretty self-explanatory. So these proteins store different types of molecules. Often they're in things like seeds or eggs, where the protein stores food for the baby or the offspring of that organism to use as it's growing. So a really common protein that's found in wheat is called gluten. And gluten stores food for the growing seedling of the wheat plant when the seed falls into the ground and starts to grow. And in humans, we know a lot of people are actually intolerant to gluten, and that's because their body fights off the gluten protein as if it was an infection. Okay, so these are all the different classes of proteins, and pretty much every protein falls into one of these groups.